welcome to the Whole Lotta Jesus podcast. This is the first episode, and I'm so glad to introduce Katie Keith. We met in college, and she's just a wonderful person. I'm so excited for y'all to get to hear her testimony about her and her husband, how she started her business, how she pursued it full time, and how she just depended upon God along the way. So thank you, Katie,
I'm excited
for being here. Yeah.
Very excited.
So exciting. This is your first podcast?
Yes, I have never done a podcast. I'm excited. Not the best public speaker, but I feel good that this doesn't feel super public.
Yeah.
We're just talking to each other, right?
Yes.
Nobody else is here.
Nobody else is here. Totally. Okay, so I want to give you all a little background about Katie. So she was born and raised in Magnolia, Arkansas. She went to Southern Arkansas University. And I just want to say, she majored in interactive media and marketing. We have the same major.
Yes.
And so we are a little biased about it. We're going to go into more detail about it. But it is a pretty cool major to do.
Yeah.
And I feel like the name of it doesn't do it justice.
It's a mouthful, too.
Yes, it is a mouthful. Yeah.
Nobody can ever remember it.
Yeah. Because it is a really cool major, and I don't feel like a lot of people know, like, what is interactive media? And so, but it's definitely cool. Again, we're a little biased about it.
Well, nobody ever remembers the name of it either.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
that's another thing.
Yes.
Total mouthful. Well, and then the year we started college, it was the first year the major was, I guess, like instated on campus too. So brand new major. We were probably some of the first to graduate. We definitely were the first to graduate with a major too. So that's kind of cool, right?
Yes.
So,
I mean, I think you were the first.
I think I might have been the because I graduated a little early. So probably.
Yeah. Yes. And what's so cool about this major is it takes 3 majors and it puts it in one. And so it takes graphic design, mass communications, and business marketing, and it puts it all in one major. And it was so great because you didn't have to choose between, do I want to major in marketing and minor in graphic design, or do I want to major in mass communications and minor in marketing? I mean, it just took all 3, and I feel like it was a very well-established major. And one thing that was so cool about it was you would go into the different classes, and they'd all be talking about the same thing. Mm-hmm. And it was just so... and then while she was in college, she started her photography business, and it's so inspiring for her to start that. So she's so good at what she does. I mean, if you need a wedding photographer, or if you're having a baby, or senior pictures, or whatever, Katie is your girl.
Love it. Little plug there.
Yes. And I'm going to show, y'all will see pictures. If you're watching on YouTube, you're going to see pictures of some of her work. And I mean, it's just beautiful what she does. And so she shot all over Arkansas and all over Texas. She's not afraid to travel.
I'm not. Been to a few other states, but mainly Arkansas, Texas. But hey, take me anywhere. I'll go.
Yeah. So one thing that I want to ask is, what is the coolest way that you've seen God move either in your life or in somebody else's life?
Mm-hmm. I love it. Starting with the deep questions. I was thinking about this when you told me about some of the questions that you're going to ask me, and a few things came to mind. But I mean, obviously, having a husband in ministry, it has to be him. He has a lot of cool ways. I just feel like God's hand is super heavy on him, and he was a youth pastor for a couple of years. And one of the coolest experiences I've had in terms of ministry or in terms of God is he was planning a big night at youth, and it was going to be a night where the gospel was preached, and a chance for the students to bring friends, people that they knew weren't saved. And he takes every opportunity that he preaches super seriously, like very deeply, and he has like all kinds of little routines he goes through just to kind of get in the zone. It's serious, right? And it's something I do really respect about him. But one of the things he told me that he did was he believes in having really bold faith and asking for big things because you can. And he says a lot of people are kind of scared to ask for big things or ask or step out in bold faith. But one thing he did was he asked God. He asked God. Gosh, you have to cut some of this.
No, it's okay. You're doing great.
Yeah. he prayed and he said, God, will you please save 20 students? I'd love to see 20 students saved. And if you think about it, like sometimes when you go to church or there's an event, you may see a couple people saved, and that's awesome. Every amount, it's not about the numbers, but any soul saved is huge and as important as and exciting. But he said, I want to see 20 students saved. I know we have more than just a couple in here that don't know God. And that night, 21 kids were saved.
Wow.
And that was insane. One of the craziest and coolest things. And he was just like, this is insane. Like, obviously he believed it. He prayed it and he knew it was a bold prayer. But he said, I mean, I know God can do that. Nothing is too big of an ask for God. And I just feel like that was just confirmation of what God is doing in his life and our lives. And it was really affirming, but super, super cool. So,
that is cool.
Yeah,
That's
it was
so
really,
cool.
really neat. So I love that.
That's awesome. Okay, thanks for sharing that. So tell the viewers a little bit about y'all's upbringing. Were you raised in church? Why did you choose SAU?
Yeah.
Why did you choose your major? Just
right.
all that.
Well, I was raised in church. And I was raised in small town Arkansas, our town that we went to college in. And gosh, going blank again.
No, it's okay. You're doing great. You're doing great.
Yeah, I was raised in church. My dad was a deacon, a Sunday school teacher for youth boys, and my mom was a Sunday school teacher for kids. My grandparents were Sunday school teachers. And so a lot of like ties to the church, have a lot of family members that have been in ministry, and so it was just something that like I was involved in at a young age. And Dalton's grandfather was actually a pastor too. So we've had a lot of influences in our life, like in church. So very much raised in church. And Dalton knew that he wanted to go to SAU. I ultimately wanted to. Like I said, I've lived in one town my whole life. I thought it'd be fun to go somewhere else. And I also thought that to get a good education, what I wanted to do, I needed to go somewhere else, somewhere that had like an art degree. We talked about like the major we chose just encompassed all of it.
Yeah.
But I thought I had to go somewhere else to have that. You know what I mean? And so like I said, the year that we went to SAU was the year the interactive media and marketing major was started. And so we ran into one of the art professors at Walmart. My mom and I did my senior year of high school, and we were talking to him about like what I was interested in, and he started telling us about that major, and I was like, well, dang, I feel like that makes sense. Like I need to go there. And so really it was about the degree. That's what had me go to SAU, and I am so thankful that I did. And it was nice getting to stay in hometown. I lived on campus, got the experience, but also like stay close to family, which was fun too. And yeah, that's what had me. Yeah, go ahead.
No, so you lived in the same town that you went to college, but you lived on campus.
Yes.
So would you recommend that? I mean, like, because I've heard of people who they live in the same town, but they live at home.
Right.
And from someone who, I didn't live in the same town. I moved 8 hours away, but living on campus, I feel like it just made you experience the whole college experience. And I feel like your level of like independence and just like walking out as an adult on your own just grows so much because it's like, I'm not, like my mom doesn't do the laundry. Like I do my laundry. And it was just very stepping out. And so would you recommend, like, even if you go to the same town or even if you go to the same college in the same town, would you recommend living on campus and like how that shifted your going like from
freedom type of thing? Yeah, I mean, obviously, like it depends on like who you are and what kind of experience you want to get. I feel like it was definitely huge for me, something I do personally recommend. I know that everybody has different goals and things going into college, but I loved that although I stayed in the same hometown, like I felt like I had the full experience, because I feel like some people aren't going and looking for the full experience. They want to get their degree, and like that is great. I did want to feel like I was going to college, going off to college, but also like loved that I could go home and get like home cooked meal.
Yeah.
So that was really nice. And it also like wasn't as scary. I know that you went off, so maybe, I don't know, maybe it was a little nerve wracking not knowing as many people, but it was, I loved it. I loved getting to live on campus and feeling like I had like college like life and then also like home life, but it was not too far away.
Yeah, so that's so good.
Yeah, I liked it a lot.
So you kind of got the best of both worlds.
Yes, I do. I would say that I did. So
that's good. That's good.
To stay at home when I wanted to, but also like obviously lived on campus, so mostly did that. But if I needed to get away, I could.
Yeah,
So,
that's good.
yeah.
Okay, so one of the quotes that you say on your website is, and this is so awesome, Katie. You say, I vividly remember sitting in a circle with my friends in my 6th grade classroom talking about what we wanted to be when we grew up. I told them all I wanted to be a photographer, and many of them agreed that they thought that that sounded fun too. And I remember thinking, no, I'm serious. I really am going to be one. Ha ha ha. And I just love that because it's like at such a young age, you knew, like, God planted the seed for what he wanted you to do in the 6th grade. Because like I remember being in the 6th grade, and like over time what I thought I wanted to do changed so much.
Right.
But just the fact that you were so affirming in, no, this is actually what I want to do. And so talk a little bit about the difference between an idea that sounds fun, because I think when we're young it's like, oh, what do I want to be? And you think of all these ideas that are like, oh, this would be cool. But you actually had, at least at that age, it seems like you understood the commitment, and like you understood, no, this is what I want to do. I don't just want the idea, that I actually want to pursue it.
Right. Well, that's funny that it sounds like I just knew. I didn't. I'm glad that I felt that. I think I loved things that were creative, and I think it sounds fun, like having a creative career. Like it really does. Like if you look at it like face on. But I definitely went into it blindly. Like I didn't know like all that came with it. I knew that when I said that, I mean, there's so many things. It's not even just photography that like kids are like, well, I want to be like a professional athlete or something like that. You know, every kid's like, not every kid, but you know, there's a lot of kids who are like, oh, me too. Like that sounds so fun. But that was kind of my experience. I was like, well, like I know that you all want to do that, but I'm doing this. Like, so I don't think it necessarily makes me like, oh, I'm just so unique. But I just knew that I wanted to do something fun, and I liked creative things. I liked art. I didn't really know what it looked like. I remember being younger and thinking like we took a career class in like 8th grade. I don't remember what it was called, something like that, something career building. And I remember we had to pick like 2 careers we're interested in, and I wrote photographer and art teacher. And so I knew it was going to be something kind of creative. I just was really drawn to that, but I couldn't have told you in any capacity what being a photographer would like really entail or come with. I just knew like, oh, that sounds cool. I think that was in my head, like, it sounds cool.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of kids go through the phase of like, it's fun to do like a little photo shoot with your friends and like, and so I definitely had that. You can ask my cousin and my sister. I definitely, and my college roommates too, I made everybody pose for me. And then it kind of snowballed a little bit, but, I definitely I wasn't super business savvy, and I had to learn all that like as like it went. But I'm really glad I went into it blindly, because ignorance is bliss. And I might have gotten a little scared if I knew what all I would have to do like actually like on the back end. But I'm glad that like I was drawn to like a creative career and something that was really fulfilling, and a hobby turned into a career, and it's something that I'm passionate about and I love. And I have had help along the way in the business areas, and like I said, glad I didn't know what all came with it, because I might have gotten a little scared away.
Yeah.
Because starting your own business is kind of scary, but I'm so thankful. I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Yeah, so. That's so good. That's so good. Yeah, I just think, I don't know if it's our time that we live in with just the instant gratification or what it is. I know through you, through my husband, Briston, like seeing y'all pursue business, it's really taught me just like how much commitment and like how much hard work goes into it. And I think that there's a lot of, on the back end, there's a lot of things that people don't see that y'all are having to do. I remember my mentor, this was way before I met Briston, and she told me, she said, when you have your own business, she said, you never have time off. She said, you know, for a 9-to-5 job, you go to work, you do your work, you go home, you have vacation. But she said, when you have your own business, you might get an email at 10 o'clock at night. You might get a phone call, you know, so you're always working. So it's not this bliss thing that I think we all think, oh, if I had my own business, you know, I'm going to make so much money, or I'm going to have all the time in the world.
Vacation every day.
Yes. And it's like, don't get me wrong, there are perks. I mean, I will say there are perks. but at the same time, it's not, the grass isn't greener on the other side. And so I think knowing that, like, no matter where God calls you, if he calls you to open your own business or if he calls you to a 9-to-5 job, I think realizing that we can't compare one person's career to another person's, because there are pros and cons to every one of them. I love your passion for creativity. I think just like, especially with your husband being in ministry, I think like God can use that so much, because I loved it. I don't remember what pastor said this, but they were talking about how at the beginning of scripture in Genesis, the first name that we learn about God is that he's a creator. And so just this concept of like, like before you know him as Father, before you know him as Lord, before you know him as Savior, I mean, he like opens up the Bible with he created the heavens and the earth, So it's this thing of, I don't know, I just love like creators and how when we're creative, we're totally doing what
we're like emulating God a little bit, like not being him, but we're kind of, it is inspiring because he's the ultimate creator, and so it's cool when we get to make beautiful things with the things he's made for us. Like, it really is. It's cool.
Yes, and especially you being a photographer. I mean, just the because like you look at creation and like you look at a sunset, or you look at you go to these beautiful venues, you go to these beautiful sites. And it's like you get to capture the beautiful creation that God made, and the people. I mean, you can talk so much more into that. Do you want to add anything into that, or do you want to go to the next one?
You kind of covered it well. Like it's not the bliss that everybody's like, oh, your own business. I think by now people are aware that like it's a lot of work, but you really don't ever like clock out. I have tried to be better about like setting like work when I'm working and shutting it down like at night, because I used to work late, because like you said, I started my business in college, and so especially in college, I was juggling. I had 3 jobs in college, and then I was a lot of times taking like an overload of hours.
Wow.
And so it was a little hard. Like there's sometimes I'd be sitting in class listening to a lecture editing. All the people in the rows behind me were getting a little show, probably watching. But
hey, especially in I don't want to say the professor's name. Okay, keep going.
I can probably figure out which professor. But I feel like I maybe know which professor you're talking. If it's like everybody's getting a little show, but that, and then at night I would get back to my dorm, my apartment, and it'd be late night. But I loved it. Like back then, now too, I'm passionate about it and on fire about it. But especially back then at the very beginning, the new stages, you're so excited, you want to get off the ground. Like, it wasn't a job yet. It was a hobby, and it was something I was making a little money from, not a whole lot, but it was something I was just really excited about. I wanted to get off the ground, so I was excited to work on it. And so I did have probably bad hours I was working on it in a technical sense, but it didn't feel like that. It was fun. So.
What is it about photography that you love so much?
I could write a book, and I could just take over the whole podcast. Because there's a lot. I feel like it depends on like the day you ask me, or like the season I'm in, like in terms of like what I'm working on. But I feel like this is gonna sound cheesy, but I really mean it, because I'm a big people person. Connecting with like the people that I get to work with is huge. Like I love that. The amount of people that I've become friends with and gotten to know is like, I mean, I wouldn't trade that for anything. I've even met like one of my best friends through photography. She's not a client, she's another photographer, and we I'll give her a shout out. We went to college together. We didn't know each other in college. Her name's Mary Alice, and we didn't know each other. Like I said, our circles didn't run together in college, but she was starting her business around the same time I was, and she reached out to me and was just asking me like questions that she hoped that I had the answers to. I probably didn't, because I was new too, but she reached out to me, like she messaged me, and like that was kind of it. I was like, well, do you ever second shoot weddings? And I was kind of newer to weddings then, and so we started second shooting together, and it was like history. We've become super close, like love working with her. And other than that, I love being able to take a moment and making it art. that also sounds probably kind of cheesy, but really, like, you're hanging out with people, or you're at a wedding day, or you're documenting an event, and like you're capturing moments, but like it becomes like, I mean, it can become art. And I know that maybe that's objective, is that the right word? Some people maybe don't consider photography like art, or maybe the kind that I do, because it's not. I photograph a lot of people, but I do feel like you can consider it art, and I think that's pretty cool. I also love, look at some of my notes here. I got that out too. But yeah, like I said, taking somebody's love story, making it art, taking somebody's big day, and just making it beautiful, and capturing it in the way that that it felt, that the way that they remember it, and bringing back all those emotions. There's so much, but there's so much, but that's what I'll end on.
That's good. That's good. That's so good.
Yeah.
Okay, so you talked a little about you and Dalton. Mm-hmm. So I vividly remember this, Katie, and this was so cool. Because so we were walking back from, I think it was class, mm-hmm. and I was asking you about Dalton. I think at that time y'all were getting ready to get married, mm-hmm. and you had said how he was going to seminary school
right
after SAU, and I don't want to say it was like a God moment, but I really do believe it was, where it was like this realization that, and this was before I knew Briston, and Briston, yes, he wasn't even at college yet. He was still in high school, but that's
story for another
time. But he starts seminary school in January, mm-hmm. and I had always in high school, like, I want to tell y'all, don't neglect the things God's putting in your heart. I know Jeremiah says the heart is deceitful, but when you truly are seeking the Lord, He's going to deposit things in your heart that, like your business, how in the mm-hmm. 6th grade you wanted to do photography. And I remember for the longest time,
30 minutes.
Sorry. No, it's Briston. Just side note, hang on. I remember for the longest time when I was in high school, for some strange reason, I really wanted to marry a pastor. Like, it made no sense. I was like, I don't know. It was just this great desire that I had to marry a pastor and to be a pastor's wife. And it's funny because now I met Briston. Briston was not pursuing. It's not like he knew he wanted to be a pastor. Mm-hmm. And, but the Lord laid on his heart. He loves evangelism, by the way.
Like, that's sweet.
Yes. He doesn't necessarily want to pastor. He wants to be an evangelist. Which is kind of like,
yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. He wants to do travel evangelism and travel.
That's what Dalton does. That's what Dalton's doing. We need to connect them.
Yeah. But like, getting to my point, because I know I ramble. Whenever you said that Dalton was going to ministry, like, Katie, I feel like there was this moment where Holy Spirit was like, our relationship is not going to stop at college. Like, mm-hmm. when you graduate and when we move on, because some relationships are seasonal.
Yes.
And I feel like in that moment, it was like, okay, I met her, and whether it's 10 years down the road, we're going to reconnect, or mm-hmm. whether it's 15 or like whatever it is, I just know this relationship is not going to stop and only be at college. And it was just this weird moment. Again, that was before I knew Briston. And then it's so crazy because it's like, I meet my husband. He's super passionate about business. The Lord puts on his heart to go to seminary. He's super passionate about evangelism. Dalton opens up about he's wanting to do travel evangelism. So y'all just wait. We're going to see how this unfolds. But like, seriously, cool. I mean, it was definitely really cool to hear and see like how God connects people. And so, do you want to just talk more about you and Dalton, what y'all plans were after college and all of that?
Definitely. That's so cool though. I didn't know that about like what Briston was wanting to do. So we got to connect them.
Yeah.
But so I feel like when you're young and when you're in college, and also when you're like engaged young and getting married young, there's not like, I mean, some people maybe, but the way that Dalton and I work, we're not like super like, we're a little spontaneous. Like we probably should plan more. Well, we probably should plan more in the future than we do. We knew we wanted to get married, and we knew that I had a dream that I was chasing photography wise, and he had a dream he was chasing ministry wise, and it's cool to see how that's evolved for him. But like other than that, we were just like kind of blindly following like what God was laying out for us. And so I feel like it wasn't like lack of planning. It was more like, well, we have these desires on our heart, and so we're just going to chase after that, and God will, unfold the rest and in time. Because I feel like you're not supposed to know what's all meant for you, and sometimes when you make plans, God,
changes them.
Yeah, so I mean, maybe it's good that we're the way we are. But and so we got engaged. Let's see, we got engaged December 2020, and then we got married January 2021. So wait, no, that's not right. December 2019. No. Sorry.
Okay,
oh my gosh.
Wow, that was
oh my god, did not make sense. Okay, so about a year engagement. So about a year. And and so I graduated college in May 2020. Shout out COVID. It was a COVID graduation, but it was good. It was fine. and then right out of graduating college, when the world shut down and everything, I got a job. I was working, you worked in the communications department too, right? For a little bit. You didn't work there?
I worked in Vista.
Okay, you were Vista.
Yeah, so I still worked at SAU, but it was in the
But during college?
Oh, where did I?
Did you work in communications?
Okay, yeah, I worked for SA. I don't think I worked for SAU.
Okay, you didn't? I thought maybe you did like a little bit with communication. They had like some student photographers. I didn't know if you were a student photographer.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I worked as a student photographer for SAU and videographer. That's another story. But I had the interview and they didn't just hire me on the spot. I'm not trying to say that. I had to interview, but I got a job as a social media coordinator right out of college, which was great. It was a blessing. It was really exciting. I loved the people I worked with. At first, we started out working online, and then we moved into the offices that summer. But I worked there for about 6 months until I was starting to get really overwhelmed with, not in a good way, overwhelmed with like my wedding photography business. I had so much going on. If you're at all in the wedding industry, you know what it's like in October. And so October is one of the busiest wedding months. And so it hit October. I knew I was getting married in January. And so I couldn't keep the job anyways. And so I was like, I am no longer able to really balance like this full-time job and also my business. And so I put a 2 weeks notice in. I guess I stopped in October. I guess I just didn't work. So I completed October working with them. And then in November, I technically went full-time with my photography business, but I still lived in Arkansas. And then we got married. I started trying to apply for a lot of jobs in Fort Worth. We knew he went to seminary in Fort Worth. And so I knew we were going to live there, and I didn't know much about Fort Worth. I just knew, next to Dallas. I've been there I've been there to see Taylor Swift and, oh gosh, I'm going blank at who the other artist I saw was there. Josh Turner. I saw Josh Turner and Taylor Swift in Fort Worth. And I saw him in the Stockyards and Taylor Swift at the arena, whatever it is there. So I'd been there to see concerts, and that's it. I know much about it. You can cut some of that. No. Anyways, I didn't know much about it, but I knew I needed a job because my job was busy, but it was busy in Arkansas. And I didn't know anybody in that area. And so how the heck am I going to go full time that way? I mean, that makes no sense. Like I, had no ties that way. But he was going to be a student over there. I needed to work. And so, like I said, started like applying for couple dozen jobs at least. And I got like maybe a couple no's back. It's really competitive. If you're applying for jobs right now, it's rough out there. But I got a couple no's back, or just was ghosted. Like, and the industry that I wanted to work in, probably pretty competitive because I wanted to do something in media and marketing and some kind of photography or even graphic design. I was kind of open, but that's kind of an industry that there's a lot of really talented people in, and it's competitive. And so wasn't hearing back from anything. Plus I was young and new, fresh out of college, like, no experience. And so I was like, well, I guess I'm just going to have to take a leap of faith. And so it was kind of a forced leap of faith, but I was excited and somehow like kind of peaceful about it, which is weird because I should have been probably a lot more like nervous, like how are we, but I was just like excited about the change in where we're going to be. And, we're getting married and newlywed bliss and stuff. And so I was like, it's going to be great. And like my grandma actually like laughs now at me because I would tell her like, I'm going to be fine. Like I've got social media. I can market out there. I'll find people. And she says that she used to be like, oh, poor Katie. Like she's, like bless her heart. Like she not that she didn't believe in me, but she was just like worried, like nervous for me a little bit. But she says like now she's like, I mean, I'm kind of skipping ahead a little bit, but now she's like, wow, like you really did like have like a confidence, and it panned out well, because we moved there in January, and then early February, I posted a TikTok of all things, which that shouldn't be anything shocking anyways. That's what everybody's doing. But I posted a TikTok, and it went like semi-viral, like nothing crazy, but I got several wedding inquiries, all from people in Texas, from one TikTok. And I booked my whole calendar out for a year and a half of clients in Texas. And so God really provided. I could not have foreseen that. Like at the time, like I had probably just a couple weddings and maybe sessions booked in Arkansas. But as for us living in Texas, we were like, we need to budget. We don't have really much of an income. And I was hoping to build it up, but like I said, that TikTok blew up, and I spent probably a week at my laptop replying to emails, so I couldn't keep up with how many. I got over 100, which sounds like exaggerating, but I'm not kidding. I'm not saying I booked 100. I didn't book 100, so you're not going to book everybody that comes your way. But I had over 100 to respond to, so that was insane. And like I said, I booked a full calendar of weddings for like the next year and a half. So we were set. God was like, this is where we want y'all, or this is where I want y'all. And so like I'm providing. And it was really cool. And that has given me a lot of just confidence in what I'm doing and what Dalton's doing. And so, yeah, it was really cool.
That is so cool, Katie.
Yeah, it was crazy.
I remember when you posted on social media, I saw it on Instagram. You posted just explaining your testimony about how God provided. And so we all know this verse. It's in Proverbs, and it says, trust the Lord with all your heart. Do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight. I love this next part. Be not wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and turn away from evil. And just that section verse of like, what does it truly mean to trust the Lord with all your heart? And I think that there are a lot of times where God wants to push our faith, and he wants to increase it and level it up. And we cannot lean on our own understanding. Right. And we cannot be wise in our own eyes, because I think about that. And when you put your testimony of like, I'm applying for jobs, it doesn't make sense logically for me to pursue this business full-time while my husband is a full-time student, probably not making any income. Right. And we're going to a new place. We know nobody. I mean, just thinking about it, and the Lord's like, yep, this is my will. And like, it sounds crazy, but just like, do we fully trust in the Lord? And there's this passage in Jeremiah, and it's Jeremiah 17. And I'm just going to read it to y'all because I absolutely love it. It's beautiful, but it talks about trusting in the Lord, and it compares trusting in man versus trusting in the Lord. And I love it because what Proverbs says, do not lean on your own understanding. And it's like, when we lean on our own understanding, and when we are being wise in our own eyes, and I just want to say, being wise in your own eyes means that you're making your decisions based on what you think, instead of based on what Holy Spirit / God is telling you. And so, like for you, Katie, to think, and I don't want to say it's just Katie, because like I will say, when Katie posted her testimony, y'all, it was at a time that I needed it. Like my husband and I, God was putting on our heart to move. I mean, I don't want to be like, it was the same thing, but like it was so similar. He was putting on our heart to move to a city. We knew nobody. He was asking me to quit my job, which at the time, Briston was a full-time student, just started his business. We weren't really making income off of that. I was working, so all of our income was coming from me. And the Lord was like, Carley, I want you to quit your job. I want y'all to depend on Briston's business. I want you to move to a city where you know nobody. And when Katie posted her testimony, I mean, it was like literally what I needed. Aww. And so part of this reason why I made this podcast was because you all, like, we all have a testimony. We all have things. And I also want to say, your testimony doesn't stop at salvation. So like, salvation is a testimony. So, and I want to say, God saving you and God rescuing you is the most important thing ever. Like, it comes before spiritual gifts. What Jesus did on the cross is the most revelational thing. his resurrection. And I love that I can't credit that, by the way. Our pastor at our church said that. So shout out to Pastor Marty, because he said that and I don't want to take credit for it. But literally, it's so true. But I do want to say, your only testimony is not just when you get saved. Like, God should continually be doing things in your life every step of the way. And I also want to say, if you're like, well, I don't see God moving in my life, I do want to ask, like, are you acknowledging him in all your ways, or are you leaning on your own understanding? Are you trusting him, or are you being wise in your own eyes? Because I think a lot of times when we don't see God is when we're depending on us and we're trusting in man, we're trusting in our strength instead of trusting in God's strength. And so if you want, you can go read Jeremiah 17. I want to ask too, having grown up and attended college in the same small town, was it scary to think about moving away to this town? You know nobody, right. You're depending on your job. I mean, just go into...
I mean, honestly, it was... Hang on. My throat. It was, but we were so excited that, like, I don't feel like I ever really got consumed by fear, or, I mean, there was nerves, but we were so giddy, you know, excited. Like, I'd never lived anywhere else, and I love my hometown, I love Magnolia, but we were excited to experience something new, like, together, and start it was kind of a mark of, like, a new chapter. And I am very close to my family, very family oriented, so, like, I was nervous, like, am I going to get homesick? Like, am I going to get lonely? But we met some friends, like, super fast, like, off the bat, and I'm going to shout them out. Madeline and Luke, those are some of our besties in Fort Worth, and we met them probably 2 or 3 weeks after moving to Fort Worth. And so we were all visiting a church for the very first time the same Sunday. They were new to the Fort Worth area too. And we all visited church the same Sunday, and Luke had a pair of golf socks on, and my husband Dalton loves golf. And so he's like, we got to talk to that guy because he's wearing golf socks. And so we all hit it off. And so all that being said, we made some friends pretty fast, and we are still super close to those friends, like, to this day. And so God provided friendship for us. And like I said, he provided a career that could support us right away. And it was good. And we found some community pretty quickly, and we were supported. So it was nerve-wracking, but like I said, like, we had blind faith, and it worked out. And so I'm very thankful for that.
That's good. I'm so glad you have a positive attitude about moving away. Because that, moving is a big deal.
Yeah.
And, which we grew up moving around.
Really?
Yes. So going to college 8 hours away wasn't like, don't get me wrong, I miss my parents, but just when you grow up moving around, it's like you're always used to being the new kid.
Right.
It's not this, and I couldn't imagine, being, because the first time I moved was whenever I was 9 years old. Mm-hmm. And so just from an early age, you learn, like, being the new kid. And
right.
All that.
Yeah.
But I could not imagine, being older and having your roots.
And never having.
Yes. Yeah. And never moving. And it's like, okay, God, like, you're having I don't know, it's just, so I highly am inspired by y'all who have lived in the same town, and you get up and move, especially when you're older, because I feel like the older you get, the more you're
adjusted, accustomed.
Yes.
It was a huge adjustment, because like you said, I never lived anywhere else, like, went to college here in my hometown. And so, it was a big change, but I kind of feel like wherever God places me in life, like, I'm always excited. Like, I don't want to wish life and time away, but I'm always excited for the next chapter.
Yeah.
If that has God putting us somewhere else, like, I'm excited to be there.
Yeah.
I'm kind of a bloom where you're planted person. And so if God has me, 8 hours away from where we are now, like, I'm probably going to be excited again. So I love where I am. I want to stay, but I love Fort Worth. But if, we happen to move again, then I'll be excited about the new venture.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's good. That's good. One thing that I do want to ask, though, is, were there obstacles or people that challenged your peace? You talk about on your Instagram post, you talk about that weird peace that you have with moving. And did you have people basically come against this idea of not necessarily moving, but depending on your job as your income? Or was everybody pretty supportive? I mean, like, what did it look like for y'all to move and you pursue your business?
So honestly, like, looking back, our parents were all really supportive. They never voiced any worry to us, which is great.
That is.
I kind of wonder, like, what did they think about us? I should have asked them before this, but they were all supportive. There's nobody I can think of that really challenged it. We have a very strong support system. I'm really thankful for. Like, I'm really close to my in-laws, and Dalton's really close to my family too. So thankfully, there's like a lot of I guess support there, and everybody's very loving towards each other, and they support us. But I mean, the only thing I can think of is, you know, some people maybe mentioned to us, like, well, I mean, he could do seminary online or like part-time, and y'all could stay in hometown and commute and go. And I was like, no, I want the whole experience. Like, I want to go. I'm trying to go experience like a new chapter. And I do think it was imperative and really key for us to get to start married life like off somewhere else. And I feel like, I know everybody's experience is different, but I do feel like that's kind of huge. Like maybe not like having to move like right when you get married, but at some point like live kind of off on learning to rely on each other a little bit, because we had such, like, we've been dating since we were 14. So, and we got married at 21, almost 22. And so we were together probably 7 or 8 years, I think, by the time we got married. And so we had like very like established and set routines, like, and we're both from Magnolia, as both of our hometown. And so we both had very established and set things that we were involved in, and people we knew and friends. And so not that we had very separate, like, we like spent a lot of time together and hung out, but I do feel like having to start from scratch together somewhere new, like, really like made us like rely on each other more, spend way more time together than we would have if we'd started like just where we were. And like I said, everybody has different experiences, but I love that our experience was like start from scratch, like find your new life where you are. And so that was really cool and fun that we got to just like build together. Like, we were the only 2 people we knew in that town. And so, like, I mean, we were already close being together for 7 or 8 years, but like even closer, and we never lived together before. So learning to live together was fun too. And so, yeah, it was a fun experience. So.
Yeah, that's so good. I'm so glad you did not have turmoil. I know when Bristol and I moved, it was the complete opposite.
Really?
Yes. Which, okay, I do want to bring this up because I know it was a struggle for me. So like when people would come against, it wasn't everybody, but a lot of people thought we were crazy for moving and depending on his business and me quitting my job, especially me quitting my job. People there was just no understanding. And I do want to say, going back to Proverbs, we cannot lean on our own understanding. And I want to say, like, I really struggled with when somebody would come against what I feel like the Lord wanted me to do. I think the devil uses, like, how do I word this? I would think that they were like out to get me. And I would think like, and when a lot of times, y'all, people mean well. And like, we need to have this understanding and this perspective of, okay, if somebody's coming against what I feel like the Lord wants me to do, they're not necessarily horrible for thinking that. They're probably in their own mind, in their own wisdom, in their own understanding, thinking like, why the heck would you do that? You know, like, why would you? They're probably thinking that's crazy. They might be. And I also want to say even godly people, because like, I remember us moving and our mentors didn't necessarily think us moving was the best idea. And, they pursue God all the time.
Right.
And so even it goes to say, just like, we need to be understanding, and we don't need to compare ourselves and think that when somebody comes against us, they're like trying to, ruin our lives or whatever. Because a lot of times people do mean well. And, but yeah, we did. And it was definitely a growing moment. And I also want to say it was so cool because one of the people who came against us was my mom. And, And it was so cool because I do want to say, sorry, I keep repeating that.
You're fine.
I do want to say.
You're good. You're good.
She came against us, but she totally meant well. Like, from a mom perspective, she was like, what do you mean you're quitting your job and you're going to stay home? But what was so cool is I didn't know at the time, and I'm sure for you too, I didn't know at the time God wanted me to pursue this. I didn't know at the time, like, he wanted to launch the writing career. All I knew, and that's the thing, y'all, you said it earlier, like, God's not going to give you the full picture. All I knew was he was saying, Carley, I want you to quit your job. Like, that was the first nugget. And then it was like, once I quit my job, and I was like, well, why? Like, why? Like, tell me why. Like, I wanted to know. But again, you can't lean on your own understanding, and you got to trust him. Like, do you really trust him? Do you really, if he asks you to do something, do you trust that he's going to provide? Do you trust that he's good? Like, ask yourself in your own heart, do I really trust him? And I think it goes back to giving up control. And whenever I, he didn't give me the full thing. And so whenever I felt like he was like, quit your job, it was a big test. Yeah. And it was a big test of faith to basically be like, do you trust me with this? And then once I quit, once we moved, and that's a whole nother testimony of us moving and God providing all that. But once we moved, it was like, then he started depositing these futuristic things. And it's like, wow, I'm so thankful. Don't get me wrong. I loved SAU. I loved my job at SAU. I loved the people that I worked with. I mean, I'm sure but it's also like, I wake up every day and I love what I'm doing. And it's like, I'm so thankful that I obeyed and I listened. And, cause I will say, my time at SAU, it seemed like the longer I was there, the harder it got. Not necessarily the work, but just like showing up every day. It was like, I do want to say, when God shifts you, I feel like you're going to know. Because when I first started, oh my gosh, y'all, I was like running with a bang. Like, yes, we're probably going to be here for a couple of years, like all this stuff. But then it was like, the longer it went on, the more I felt like God was shifting and what he wanted me to do and what he wanted Briston and I to do. And it was nothing against the people and it was nothing against the job, but it just seemed like he was shifting what he wanted us to do. And so when we moved and we stepped into this, it totally made sense of why he had us do that. And so for someone what advice would you give someone who maybe is in a similar situation as you, but is afraid to take a leap of faith?
I will say I would say that my advice would be if somebody who is in a similar situation, like wants to take a leap of faith, I would definitely like have some kind of like stability or support, whether that's like your spouse or like you having some kind of job, even if it's a part-time job, support you while you chase it. But I will say like know when to quit though, because don't let like what you're doing and working on that's supposed to be supporting your dream job like actually stifle your job or like what you're wanting to do. Because I feel like thankfully like in my case like I had to quit when I did because we were about to move anyways. But I hope I would have quit when I needed to, if not. But I'm glad I quit when I did because it forced me to like just run at it like as hard as I could, and it panned out. And I found like some kind of like success with it, and it really took off. I hit the ground running with it. So, but yeah, I would say like have some kind of support, but know when to quit. Like know when to drop everything and invest in it, and don't neglect it. Like.
Yeah, what you were saying about having a job while you're pursuing a career, whatever God's putting in your heart, because you do need to supply and provide for your family, and you have bills and, working and all that. But then also what you were saying about, don't let your job that you have cause you to neglect what God's putting on your heart, because I know like it was so hard because I felt like the Lord was pushing me to write. But it was like I was getting a master's, I was working full time, and I graduated with my master's in August. And it was like at that point, I'm telling you, it was just pressed of, Carley, it's now or never. Like,
Right.
Jesus is coming back soon. I have called you to do things, and, you can either, and I loved, it was the Ramp in Alabama. I listened to their podcast, and it was so cool because one of the pastors there, it was a pastor's wife, she talked about how you can be doing things that are technically like godly, but it's busy work. And she said, she's a professor at their school, and she said, there's things that I have to do every day. I have to do godly everyday tasks.
Yeah.
But she said, there's things that God has literally put on my heart for me to do, and I have to make time to do those things, and I can't neglect those things because I'm doing other godly work.
Right.
And I think it's the same way, like, evaluating your priorities and just really praying and being like, okay, God, in this season of my life, like, what are you calling me to do? What are you calling me to focus on? And I think also having the patience, because one of the awesome things, I listened to John Bevere, and he talked about how prophetic words, so God speaks through prophecy. I mean, like, that's his language, is prophecy. And in Genesis, he literally gives, the fall happens, and if y'all go, I think it's in like chapter 3 or 4, but he gives the man, Adam, Eve, and the serpent all a prophetic word. And when he talks to the serpent, he says, I'm going to have a seed through the woman, and it's going to bruise your head, and you're going to strike his heel. And he was prophesying about Jesus. And so God always speaks through prophecy, and it's all over the Bible. And John was talking about how he would get, when he was in his 20s, he would get all these prophetic words from like pastors. They would say, I see you doing this, talking to people and doing all these things. And he said the first one did not come to pass until he was 50.
Oh, wow.
Seriously. And when you think about the story of Joseph, Joseph in the Old Testament, Joseph gets 3 dreams. I think it's 3. But he gets 3 dreams, and it's all about how he's going to rule, how he's going to rule over his brothers, how he's going to be so high up. And he gets those dreams when he's 17. And, Katie, I think about, you were in the 6th grade when you got your, like, moment of God's calling me to photography. But it's like, for Joseph, he went on for 13 years, and he went through trials and tribulations, and his prophetic word or dream didn't come to pass until he was 30. And that's when he stepped into the dream God had given him at 17. And same for you, like in the 6th grade, you got, okay, I want to be a photographer. But then, you got to go through middle school and high school and college, and then it comes to pass. And especially for us young people, don't get me wrong, I do not want to shut down our passion for the ministry, or our passion for doing this, or our passion for like proclaiming the gospel. But I do want to say that we have got to be patient. Like, I think about the story of Saul and David. Y'all, Saul in the Old Testament, God anointed him king. He had no time of testing. And I want to say that, like, building your character and building your testing for God, and God testing you, is so important. Because if God gives you a dream and says you're going to speak to millions of people all over the world, but you don't have the right character to handle that, you're going to ruin your witness. I mean, like, literally what happened to Saul in the Old Testament was he was anointed king. He gets king, and God tells him to go to war and to kill all these people. And he doesn't. He kills most of them. And this is the thing, y'all. He halfway obeys. So he kills most of the people. But God told him to kill all the people. I'm not saying go kill people. Please don't. But you can go read this in 1 Samuel. He kills most of the people. He doesn't obey God fully. Okay? So partial obedience is not full obedience. He doesn't kill all the people. And Samuel, the prophet, comes to him, and the Lord, y'all, this is so heavy. The Lord removes Saul's kingship because he did not obey. So get this. Y'all know this. A monarchy is by the lineage. So the king, it's like England. The king, it passes down to the son, passes down all the way. Okay, well, Saul disobeyed. So God removes his kingship. So guess what? Saul's whole lineage is removed from being king of Israel. And the mantle is shifted to David. And I do want to say this. So let's say your parent has done something. I mean, like, guys, we're all going to fail because we're human. But Jonathan was Saul's son. And y'all, Jonathan was so obedient. And so I want to say, don't think because your parent failed, like if they failed as a pastor, if they failed as a dad, or if they failed in an area of life, like if your parents got divorced, or if your parent was a drug addict, or whatever it was that your parent failed in, don't think because they failed in that area, your calling or your purpose in life is removed, because it's not, okay? My point in me saying that is that we need to be fully obedient in what God's calling us to do. And David, so what's different between Saul and David is David as a young boy is anointed king. And you guys, David was the last picked. I mean, if you go read the story, Jesse, his dad, Samuel comes to Jesse, his dad, and Jesse brings all of David's brothers except for him into the room. Mm-hmm. So David's out in the fields keeping the sheep, and Jesse and I forget how many brothers he had, but he had a lot of brothers. They're all in the room, and Samuel, I don't remember if he like lays hands on him, but he does something. And the Lord's like, no, I don't pick that one. No, I don't pick that one. And he goes through all of them. And so David was the least expected to get picked. And so I don't think if God's calling you to do something and nobody thinks that you're qualified to do it, don't think that that's a sign that you shouldn't do it, because David was the same exact way. I mean, he literally is in the field. His dad doesn't think he's qualified to be king. I mean, even his own brother, when he goes to the war, it's so funny. I heard a pastor say, David bringing the egg and cheese, or not the egg and cheese, but the sandwiches to his brothers at war, and he's not even in the army, and he's the one who fights Goliath. And so I do think at times, we need to be bold in the faith. Mm-hmm. I do think at times, and I also want to say, I know I'm jumping all over the place, I'm sorry, y'all, but I also want to say that y'all, like, God, it's literally like the story of Esther. He's going to pick somebody to do it. So if you're like all the army was afraid to fight Goliath, okay, somebody's got to fight Goliath. Like, you just can't. So if God's calling you to do something, if you say no, he's going to find somebody to do it. Okay. So, I think that's good and bad. We can't be afraid to step out in faith, but then at the same time, just like David, I feel like there's opportunities that in your life, you're going to walk into a room and like God can use you, and you're literally bringing the egg and cheese. Mm-hmm. Like you're not the main person, or you're not even in the group. And so don't be, like you were saying, don't be afraid to have bold faith. Yeah. Don't be afraid to step out. And going back to my main point of why I said all this, because I do think as young people, again, this instant gratification, I get a dream that God wants me to preach. And it's like, tomorrow I got to go stand on the platform and preach. Or God gives me a dream to open a business. Or God gives me a dream to do whatever. And it's like, okay, tomorrow I have to do it. No, like God could be prophesying to you about what's going to happen in the future. And so I do recommend, like, if you do have a dream, or if you do have something that you want to pursue, like really seek the Lord and really pray, okay, God, do I need to pursue this right now? Like, where is my level of priority and what season am I in? Because he might want you to pursue it right then and there, or, he might be showing you what's going to come to pass in the future. And I also want to say, as young people, we cannot be afraid to keep learning, and we cannot be afraid of correction, because it's so beautiful to get corrected. I know that might be like in our world today, that is such a bad concept, because we have your truth
Mm-hmm.
and, you know, what you think is right. Again, being wise in your own eyes, just going back to this verse. But being corrected is such a beautiful thing, because if somebody is truly correcting you, now criticism's different, but true correction, godly correction, it's to mold you more like Christ. And I really feel like we need to pray and have an open heart that we will always handle correction with openness and just sincerity. Because now, does it feel good? Heck to the no. Like, I remember my college pastors, she corrected me at times, and y'all, I was like, I threw a pity party. I mean, I literally was like, I do not like this. You know, I don't think anybody likes correction. But what it does is it exposes, and what is the word I'm trying to look for? It penetrates the flesh, and it penetrates your fallen nature, and it has an opportunity to plant a seed of righteousness. And so I think, just like, in order to, like, y'all think about a garden, how do you plant seeds? Okay, you have to dig it, plant the seed, and then you have to wait for it to grow. So I think in the same way, correction is like, I'm digging in the ground. And y'all know the parable about the soil. And I've heard a pastor say that the soil, this is in the New Testament, so just Google it, because I can't remember exactly where it is. But in the New Testament, it talks about, Jesus is talking about the different types of soil. So the seed is the word of God. And whenever somebody preaches the word of God, sometimes the seed falls on, I don't remember all the instances, but I'm going to explain it like this. Sometimes the devil snatches it, and you don't have understanding of it, and so the devil can snatch it away, and you don't remember what they're talking about. Sometimes you receive it with joy, and you're like, oh my gosh, I got this revelation. And then the cares of life, so maybe it's, idolizing money or a job or whatever, you see the pleasures of life, and they start taking root in your heart, and they start taking the priority in your heart. And so the word you get from the Lord goes away. It filters out. And then there's another one, but I don't remember it. But the last one is, it falls on the good soil, and it roots, and it produces righteousness. And I heard a pastor say that the soil that it's talking about, that's your mind, that's your brain. When you're receiving and hearing from godly people, what is your heart open to receiving? We continue to go back to this verse in Proverbs, but I continually want to say, stop being wise in your own eyes. Stop leaning on your own understanding. When we sit in a service and when we hear a pastor, we should have an open heart. And I also want to say, y'all, I was so terrified of what if they're false? What if they're a wolf in sheep's clothing? This is what I want to say. If you have Holy Spirit, you could be literally sitting in a service. Holy Spirit's going to check in your spirit. Holy Spirit's going to be that's off. You don't need to sit there the whole time and be like, oh, is what they're saying right? Because if you really have Holy Spirit, He's going to be the one to say, hey, that's against my word. Hey, that's not right. And so I think having an open mind whenever it comes to pastors, and I also want to say, I know I'm jumping all over the place, but I also want to say, because this is one area that I had to grow into, there's a difference between a character flaw and a red flag. And so when, if you see someone, a lot of times we have character flaws, and we're all growing. So I don't think you should look at a pastor. Should they? No. Should they be in sin? No. Habitual sin? No. They should have the fruits of the Spirit. But I do think there are times where we have character flaws, and it's just because we're human, and we don't need to criticize them for having a character flaw, because there's things that we're all going to do that, you could be like, Carley, you don't do this right, or whatever right. It is. And but I think we need to look at the heart, and I think we need to look at, are they genuinely pursuing the Lord? Are they genuinely pursuing his will? Are they genuinely, trying to be obedient and mold like Christ? And if they are, then yeah, if they're doing a red flag or, if they're, then yeah, correct them. But I think correction comes, and I also want to say, y'all, so like going back to what I said about my mom, I didn't have to correct her with us moving. Actually, what happened was I just went to prayer and I was like, Lord, if you're really calling us to move, like, I want my mom's support. Like, I want my family's support. And so if they never support us, fine. But my parents are Christian. My parents go to a godly church. And so I'm like, I know you can correct her. And all I did was I prayed. And literally the Lord corrected her. And it was so cool. It's so cool. That's for a different time. But is it okay if I go into it?
I don't care.
Okay.
Yeah, go for it.
But so what had happened was she went to a training for work. And y'all, this is so funny. So my big deal that I kept telling her is, Mom, I feel like the Lord's calling me to quit my job. And she's like, well, what are you gonna do? Like any mom would be, because the word does say, in order for you to eat, you have to work. I mean, God did design us to work. He didn't design us to be lazy and do nothing, Now, there is rest, but y'all get what I'm saying. And so she's like, what are you going to do? And I would literally be like, I don't know, because he didn't give, he didn't say what was next. Yeah. He just said, hey, you need to quit your job. So I would say, I don't know. And she would kind of be like, she just wasn't agreeing or supportive of it. And so one morning she woke up, she called me because I was like, Lord, she's just, so she calls me and she's like, because I felt like, and I'm sure y'all know this too, I wanted to go to my mom and tell her these things, not for her advice. And I think this is another thing, because this is another thing I've had to learn, is like, sometimes people come to you for advice, but then sometimes people come to you like just to share. Right. And all they want you to do is listen, and they just want you to, be an open ear and whatever. And I was coming to my mom not for advice. I was just coming to my mom to be like, hey, this is what the Lord, is calling me to do. And because y'all also got to realize there's like internal processors and then there's external processors. And I'm a very external processor. Like, in order for me to understand what's going on, I have to talk about it. Like, yes. I just don't know. It just can't stay in here. It's crazy, but it's so true. And so I was coming to her to do that, to like talk about it, not for advice. Well, I felt like every single time I'd call her, she was giving advice. And it's like, it's kind of frustrating because it's like, Mom, I'm not coming to you for this. But I prayed about it. And one morning she woke up, she called me apologizing. I never mentioned to her about, I never mentioned anything to her. And she just called me apologizing. She was like, I felt like I wasn't there for you. And I felt like, it was so cool because it's like everything that I was feeling, she was apologizing for. And then she goes to this training for work, and she works for a Christian organization, and they're training. And the lady who gets up, she starts telling her testimony about how the Lord put on her heart. My mom works for a nonprofit, and nonprofits technically don't make a lot of money. And at the time, the woman speaking was working for a corporation. She made very good money. She worked for a hospital. She had health insurance. She had all the benefits. And she felt like the Lord put on her heart for her to quit her job. And she goes to her mom, and she says how she goes to her mom, and her mom was super supportive. And y'all, that convicted my mom. So my mom was like, I did not respond that way to Carley whenever she was like, and so she calls me afterwards, and she's like, it just totally changed her perspective. And it was so awesome, because my point in telling y'all that is that, like, sometimes we don't need to go to people and correct them. Sometimes we just need to pray. And if they have a relationship with the Lord, and if their heart is opened to correction, and we can pray for that, they're totally going to receive it. And like my mom was not, even though she was leaning on her own understanding and not trusting in the Lord, she didn't consider, I don't think she considered herself wise in her own eyes. And so I feel like when we don't consider ourselves wise in our own eyes, when God speaks through someone, it like penetrates us, and it's like, you know, I need to shift, or I need to trust in the Lord more. And it was just cool because it was like, I didn't have to say anything. She, you know, the Lord spoke through the woman. And so we've gone all over the place. But yeah. Oh, okay. This is also another thing. I think I've talked about this a little bit, but like when people come against you and like God's calling you to do something, but there's obstacles, I think that again, going back to patience, and like I don't think it's right for us to get upset with them because they don't understand, especially because Scripture talks about how like the eyes are closed. I know with the Pharisees in the New Testament, I mean, y'all, like it was their own pride, but also there's times where people's eyes are closed and they can't see. And I think just having patience with them is truly going to show the Lord. And because God has patience with us. And I think there's so many times where, you know, when God is calling us to do something, the moment we don't do it, he doesn't like uproar in this anger and is like, you're not doing this. You know, I know Scripture talks about how he's patient and wants no one to perish. And so having this understanding of, okay, if I go to somebody and I think they're going to support me in whatever thing God's calling me to do, but they end up not, instead of acting out in anger, I need to act out in patience and just, you know, pray that eventually they're going to see the will that God has for me. Do you want to add anything to that?
You summed it up really well. You were going off.
I know, I feel bad. I'm like, Katie, do you?
No, I just mean like you. I mean, I don't know. You worded it really well. Like you're obviously very like well versed like in your knowledge and stuff about the Bible. So I loved it. I mean, good stuff for sure.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And last thing, and then we can.
No, you're good. You're fine.
And I also want to say, guys, sometimes people like will never literally understand. So, you know, our hope is that, again, fixing our hope on the right things and really hoping in God and not hoping in man, because there's people that I love them to death and I hope one day they come to understanding. But when Briston and I were getting ready to move, I mean, they literally thought we were crazy. And I know that they meant well, but it's like, I don't know, you know, I always want to have the perspective, like we should always have the perspective that if somebody does something that we don't agree with, but they say it's God's will, we can't say, no, that's not God's will. You know, like we can't. And so, but sometimes y'all, people just will never understand. And we have to be okay with that. You know, I think about when Jesus was like talking about, you know, I came and he's saying, you know, dad will be against mom and brother against, you know, that whenever it's talking about that. And so I do think there are some times where you're going to do something that the Lord's calling you to do and your mom or dad like might not understand it.
Right.
And it's okay. Like I know Paul says like, if I were to please man, I would not be a servant of God. And so realizing my hope is not in the support of others. My hope is truly in God and I'm trusting in him. And don't get me wrong, I do think it hurts. Like, so I do think if your friends or your family doesn't support you, you need to grieve that. Like, don't think, you know, you're just going to brush it over and move on. I do think you need to take the time to sit and be like, okay, this is a hurt that I have. This is something that I'm experiencing. But again, like allowing God to heal that and continually being obedient in what God's calling you to do, despite pushback and turmoil and stuff. Because I've heard people say sometimes the hardest people to witness to is your family.
Yeah, definitely.
And so, just learning. Okay, so how has this experience shaped your walk with God?
I would say it's made me really aware of like his faithfulness, like we've been talking about, kind of that kind of thing. It's taught me to rely on him and not my current outward experience, like you've kind of been saying too. I feel like going through a season where you had to have kind of a blind faith and God provides, like it really opens your eyes to how much God can really do if you allow him to, you know?
Yes, that's so good, Katie. I know. So God's faithfulness is not just financially, right?
Yeah,
Like
absolutely.
his faithfulness is in all areas of life. But I know, like at such a young age, he truly showed me, like in finances, how faithful he is.
Yes.
And I think it's beautiful. And y'all, which if you see my stuff on social media, I'm very passionate about managing your money wisely. Read Proverbs. Talks a lot about that. But that is one area. I know that the verse says, the love of money is the root of all evil. I'm not talking about chasing money, and I'm not talking about loving money. But what I am talking about is opening your finances to the Lord.
Right.
And really having the perspective that God did not call us to be poor. Okay. He talks a lot in the Old Testament that if you follow his will, if you do his law, he's going to bless you. And which blessing is not just financially, but he talks about in Malachi how if you bring the whole tithe in, how he's going to open up the heavens, he's going to stop the devourer, and people are going to call you blessed. And again, the goal is not to be rich, but I think opening, like, I want to ask you, have you opened your heart and have you opened your finances to the Lord? Because one thing that God showed me was, like, I think in the church we are very good about doing the godly commandments, doing the spiritual commandments. Okay, I need to love my neighbor. Okay, I need to have the spiritual fruits. But I do think there's areas in our life that we're lacking in teaching and having discipleship in. I think one of those areas is money. And I think it's a touchy subject because it's like, right? Like, I don't know all the stuff about why it's a touchy subject, but I do think it is a touchy subject. And I do think as Christians and in the church, we don't have enough like understanding, and we're not taught enough about it. And I think that the enemy uses that as an advantage for his kingdom, because y'all got to realize, like, how are we supposed to provide for missionaries? Or like, how are we supposed to advance God's kingdom if we don't open our finances to him? And I know just him just showing me through college, like, how much he provides. And so, and I encourage y'all to look up what God thinks about debt. And one thing that our college pastor said was, they didn't get saved till they were later, like they were 27. And so, they had taken out student loans. They had taken out all the stuff, credit cards, all car loans, house loans, all the stuff. And she really encouraged me. She said, try to set up your finances so that if God calls you to Africa, you don't have any ties. And what she meant was that, like, I don't know, y'all. I just am very passionate about, like, opening your finances up to the Lord and, like, having a heart that truly gives and is generous. And, I mean, just having the whole door wide open and letting God determine how you manage your finances, not you. Like, going back to not being wise in your own eyes. It talks about the borrower, slave to the lender, and all of that. And one thing that when I was in high school, I took a Dave Ramsey class, and he talked about getting school paid for. And y'all, college is expensive. Like, it is so expensive. But you were talking about bold prayers and how Dalton, like, I don't think we ask enough. Jesus talks about, or I don't even think it's Jesus, but somebody talks about in the New Testament, you do not have because you do not ask.
Right, yeah.
And, then it says you do not receive because you ask with the wrong motive. But I just think that first part of, like, are you even asking? Like, are you even asking God? And I don't think it's wrong to, I mean, of course you need to check your heart, but I don't think it's wrong to be like, I want to go to school debt free. Like from that class in high school, I was like, okay, I want to go to school debt free. And it's so funny because I wrote on a prayer wall. I had a prayer wall. Y'all, I did not pray for this enough. Like I wrote on it and then literally like I might have prayed for it twice. But I feel like for God to answer, I needed to pray for it more. But and God provided. I mean, I had no student debt from SAU. And it was so beautiful because it was just like he confirmed it. And then y'all, it's so great because Briston and I, we have no debt. We have bills, like, so you're gonna have bills, but we have no debt. We decided to get an old car because we didn't want a car loan. Like, I'm not saying, you know, we got all this money and no, y'all, we had to sacrifice. For the longest time, we were on one car. I mean, we didn't have we were literally down to one car because we didn't want a car loan. But it's so great because I just feel like we need to pray and be like, it's great because now it's like, if God lays on a heart to give, it's not like we have all these things that we have to pay for. It's not like the credit card's getting our money. It's not like the car loan's getting our money. It's not like these worldly things are taking our money. Like yes, we have bills, but we're at a point where it's like, if God wants us to give, we have the freedom to give. And I want all of us to be like that. Like, I want our hearts to be open to, like, you pursuing your business. I mean, like, us living on Briston's business, I mean, if we had student loans, if we had car loans, if we had all this debt, we couldn't because his business doesn't supply enough, but because we lowered our expenses, you know, we were like, we're only going to have the bare minimum. I can't go shopping all the time. You know, we have like, it allows us to like do the things we want to do. And so, yeah, I don't know if you want to say anything more about that.
That's good. Yeah.
But okay, so, let's look. So I love this. You say, as soon as I start to worry that my luck will run out, God shows me that I'm right where he wants me to be. And so what encouragement would you give to the audience who maybe wonders if God can really provide and for their needs and is faithful?
So like kind of the theme of what we've been talking about, I feel like if God paves the path for you, paves the path for you, that he's going to provide and he's going to be faithful to you and that path that he has paved for you. And like you said, it's not just financially, like it's in a lot of ways. It's in friendships, it's in a place to live and community and stuff like that. Yeah. And I feel like you're gonna notice the things, that the way that God is kind of carving out your life, like where you are and where you've put your faith in him, and you're going to see kind of the evidence of his faithfulness and what you're doing. So I feel like I said, I feel like if he has laid out a plan for you and you're like walking in obedience with that, then he's gonna provide. And I don't just feel like that. Like I know that to be true because like I'm living it, and which is really cool. So
yes,
yeah.
That is so cool.
Yeah,
that's so cool. Okay, thank you so much, Katie. This was wonderful.
Yeah, so fun.
Thank you for being my first guest.
Absolutely, so honored. It's been so fun. I'm glad to be the guinea pig.
Yes, yeah. We had to test all this stuff out.
Yes.
So y'all now live in Dallas / the Fort Worth area.
Yes.
So again, if you're looking for a photographer, she's your girl.
Yes.
And you can follow her. I'll put it in the description below. But you can follow her on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and it's just KatieKeith.co.
It's KatieKeith.co. Katie with an IE.
Katie with an IE. Yes, not a Y.
Yes, not a Y.
Yeah.
KatieKeith.co. And I think that should be how you can find me on everything.
So. Okay. Yeah.
And the website's even KatieKeith.co. So
that's so easy. Yeah, that is easy. That is. And so thank you for listening, and I will see y'all next month for another episode.